Why, hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most anticipated games of 2020, at least for this first half anyway. It has finally come around. It is indeed one of the last hurrahs, a big one if I might add that. After playing 40 hours of this experience, I was able to finish the game, and boy do I have some things to say. Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is time I share my thoughts about this Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy VII is so rich with history. I think this segment this time around is going to be pretty fun. So let's get cracking. But before we do that, be sure to grab yourselves a snack and enjoy the rest of the show.
Final Fantasy VII is full of rich and prestigious history amongst video games. Series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi enrolled himself as the producer and offered more roles amongst the Final Fantasy staff. Yoshinori Kitase, previously the director for Final Fantasy VI, was named the director for Final Fantasy VII. These two together laid the foundation with the story and gameplay concepts. There were some pauses here and there. Chrono Trigger was in midst of Final Fantasy's early development. Once Chrono Trigger was completed, they picked up right where they left off in 1995. With the shift in 3D graphics, they wanted to somehow incorporate 3D elements in their otherwise 2D gaming franchise. There was also the question of where to release this game. The N64 was one of the major considerations. However, key factors such as the budgeting and performance strains on cartridge games led them to stick with the CD-based Sony PlayStation. Later during the gameplay side of things, Sakaguchi proposed a new materia system as he nurtured much of his efforts on creating something new for the Final Fantasy series. The materia system allowed for flexibility for each character that no previous game had allowed before. Tetsuya Nomura, the artist for the game, designed the limit break system, which also was revolutionary for the franchise, further emphasizing each character's personality onto the battle with such powerful attacks. Final Fantasy VII became one of the most expensive video game projects at the time, with an estimation of $40 million, in which would have equaled to $64 million with inflation adjustment, and had a staff over 100 people, another uncommon practice back in the 90s. Much work emphasis was also put into the visual direction, story, and its music, with art director Yusuke Naoda, while behind him was Tetsuya Nomura as the main character designer, and the legendary Nobuo Uematsu worked on the music entirely, and lastly, Kazushige Nojima was brought on for writing out the scenario. Final Fantasy VII pushed so much of these elements that would create such an experience for its players. During much hard work in its development, it was well on its way to retail store shelves, and not without heavy marketing and advertising. It was certainly a good time for gamers in 1996. Overall, the combined budget totaled to approximately $80 million. The game was initially aiming for a 1996 release, but was delayed for 1997. On January 31st, 1997, Japan was the first to receive the game. For North America, they had to wait until September 7, 1997 and November 17, 1997 for the PAL version. However, the Western releases provided an updated version of Final Fantasy VII. This was later on released in Japan again in October 1997, which became a trend in Japan for later Square games for some time. Final Fantasy VII was met with a landslide success as it received worldwide commercial and critical success with its gameplay, story, characters, music, and so much more. The game was revolutionary in many gaming aspects. It was the first 3D Final Fantasy console game, which came in 3 discs. The game featured 3D FMV cutscenes. It was also the first major game that killed off one of the main cast, which was a very gutsy move at the time, and has become one of the most shocking video game cutscenes in history. Final Fantasy VII came in at the right time when 3D console gaming was growing in popularity. In general, it paved the way for 3D console games. Not to mention, this was a landmark for Square Enix, or rather Squaresoft at the time. The final product was able to deliver that unique experience for its players so much that it became one of the most nostalgic games of all time. Many of the gaming content creators, streamers, and esports players across the internet have mentioned Final Fantasy at one point in their conversations, if not expressed their love for the game, especially with its storytelling. Final Fantasy VII helped broke the first barrier for JRPGs along with Pokemon for the Western audiences.
There is absolutely no denial. I think that's safe to say that Final Fantasy VII is one of the most revolutionary and sought-after games of all time. There are so many people who hold this game close to their hearts. Gamers really take it for granted as to how much Final Fantasy VII really brought to the table in terms of how games should be crafted and how games should just be expressed for its player base. When it comes to my experience, I've never had a PlayStation, unfortunately, in my childhood. I was the Nintendo kid in a neighborhood. So I never got to experience the PlayStation 1, and with that, I never got to really be a part of the launch of Final Fantasy VII. In fact, I never had any sort of Sony console until the PlayStation 3 somewhere between 2009 and 2010. That's just my little history of things. I remember the whole marketing around it. There were a lot of big posters. Buses drove by with the banner with the game on there, and I just remember how much hype there was around it as a kid. There was, you know, the demo for it. I remember like reading it from my friend's PlayStation magazine that he got. He had the disc for it. I just definitely remember the marketing schemes that were around this whole thing. So many posters, so much stuff around the corner at every store pretty much, and it was definitely something. It was definitely such a highly anticipated game even back then. My first Final Fantasy experience was playing FF10 at a friend's house. I helped my friend level up, and I got to see all the cool like overdrives and summons and all that such. Especially with 10, I think they really had a really cool overdrive system, and or you know, limit break system, I should probably say, but the summons were really cool as well. That was my first sort of exposure to Final Fantasy in general, really. That was on the PS2 at the time, and but then my first actual Final Fantasy experience that got to get my hands on wasn't until 2016 with Final Fantasy 15, and that was the vanilla version. That wasn't even like the updated version. I didn't even get to see all the in-betweens, the cutscenes, and all the updated stuff that came along with it. And of course, the Royal Edition, I kind of just at that point was done with 15 and kind of wanted to move on from there. So that's kind of just my resume when it comes to Final Fantasy before this big boy right here. I've always been familiar with the lore that was around Final Fantasy and just Square games in general, and then you can also say Kingdom Hearts as well. So that does make a lot of references. If not, they have those, you know, characters from Final Fantasy VII and such, and even X2 with the little fairies or whatever, which is really funny. But anyway, I just never really thought about owning the consoles to like play them, nor play, you know, the spin-offs or whatever as a kid. I just always stuck with Nintendo. Never really thought of it since, and boy, it all kind of just enhanced the experience all the more when I played this Final Fantasy title. Then until December 2019 or January 2020, I went ahead and bought myself Final Fantasy VII on the Nintendo Switch, because I thought it would be a great idea to have the option of being able to play not only on the TV, of course, but play in bed in case I was, you know, lazy or whatever. So it was really definitely like a different experience looking at this game versus if I were to play this game if I was a 7-year-old or even a 14-year-old. With that said, it was pretty fascinating. As someone who just hit 30, I can definitely see things in a different light, and it's really fascinating in my opinion when it comes to the context of trying to put yourself into the shoes of a game developer. It really, you know, this game just really is an interesting piece to kind of think about. This game really consists of like these, you know, low polygon figures just running around on top of a JPEG essentially. It's like looking at like an old art piece or a time capsule pretty much. It's really interesting to play through with that in mind, and it kind of just reminds me overall like moving around like a little figure on a game board or something like that, in that sense, especially for like sci-fi sort of fantasy sort of setting, kind of steampunkish noir sort of setting. It's, you know, it really all comes together to make it that much more of a interesting experience. And also with that, I was able to kind of get the context of what Midgar and all that stuff was, and in the original scenes that happened in that version, and it definitely was an enhancer going into the remake version of things.
Final Fantasy VII is not the first of the ambitious attempts of games being remade for the modern era. Final Fantasy VIII and IX were amongst these attempts, but failed to break through due to challenges of new hardware and also projects such as the Final Fantasy XIII series. People have dreamed of Final Fantasy VII being remade for the modern era, especially during a tech demo of the new Crystal Tool engine showcase at E3 2005. Such rumors were ruled out as the challenges were still around thanks to the nature of the new hardware, thus taking many years to master. Then one day, Final Fantasy producer Shinji Hashimoto propounded the idea of a remake for Final Fantasy VII to Kitase, Nojima, and Nomura. All agreed to the idea because they all have felt that they were at the point in life where if they have waited any longer, they felt that they would be too old to develop a remake or even be alive at all. Passing this project to the new generation would, in quote, not feel right. Also, with Square's close ties with Sony, they are hoping to ensure the popularity of the PS4 by creating a robust library of games, and Final Fantasy Remake would be a great addition. Full production will not fully ignite until late 2015, with Nomura taking the wheel as director, much to his surprise. The team felt that a standard remake would not suffice for today's standards, so they built the game from the ground up with an overhaul in graphics, character models, and also its gameplay mechanics as well, all while using the prevailing engine of its time, the Unreal 4 engine. Nomura was the leader of character designs. However, Roberto Ferrari was also brought on board to design the secondary characters such as Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs. They received help from a number of outlets, including the dev team of Kingdom Hearts 3 as it used the same Unreal 4 engine, and CyberConnect 2 as it helped with the action gameplay and video quality. In 2007, as gears started to shift from external to internal development, it was decided that the game would be released as a multi-game series rather than a singular game. In addition, further expanded on certain parts for the whole story, in this case being the Midgar arc. This seemed to be the right choice because of its iconic status among the Final Fantasy fanbase. In between production, there were plans for the Advent Children cast to be voicing the characters. However, given that the remake would essentially be a rebirth for the game, the casting concluded with a brand new cast of voice actors, for at least English that is, and thus began the rumors of Final Fantasy Remake scouring the internet in 2014, stirring the hope that would ever come true. Then in 2015, during the E3 presentation for Square Enix, Final Fantasy VII was finally revealed with this trailer.
Long ago, we looked upon a foreboding sky. The memory of the star that threatened all burns eternal in our hearts. Long ago, we looked upon a foreboding sky.
Max is looking out.
Memory.
Oh my god.
Oh my god! What
It's
the?
freaking
How's this real? How's this real? What?
It's it.
You maniacs!
No.
Insane! What are you doing?
How is this possible?
This is crazy.
How is this possible?
No. This ain't right.
Don't be a movie, Nomura.
Not Nomura. They'll never come
I'm
out.
okay with them.
They'll never come out.
If they took him off that to work on this, I'm okay with it. Don't be a movie.
Now the beginnings of a stir. Games.
I don't want to believe it.
I'm still not believing it. This isn't real. This ain't right. How did they keep this secret? Barrett. Oh my god. No.
Look at it already.
Are coming back.
Ah!
can't handle this.
This ain't real.
Oh my god! No, they didn't!
At last,
Oh!
the promise
No, they didn't!
has been made. At last, the promise has been made.
This Barrett! This fucking Barrett is not! Oh my god!
No way! Oh, my body! Yes!
The long-awaited, beloved return of the pioneering JRPG received a standing ovation and thunderous applause. On that day, one can say that the entire internet has exploded. After 2 weeks of the trailer's release, it garnered over 10 million views and even more after. But sometime after those days, the thunderous hype was reduced down to dead silence. Many have seemingly forgotten, as it looked grim for the development of the game given the history of Square Enix regarding to other projects. However, after 4 long silent years, in 2019, we got to see more trailers featuring the gameplay. It received some of the biggest anticipation in gaming history.
That anticipation went to even further lengths once I played the demo that was out for everyone on the PlayStation 4 around early 2020. My excitement definitely grew after playing that demo. Like, holy crap, I really wanted the game now. Like, it really showed off the graphics, the hard work that was being put into so far, and it really, I like, from even there, like, I was sold. I was definitely sold on it. I mean, I was already gonna get it anyway just to kind of experience it, but then playing the demo, like, really, like, okay, I really want to see this now, like, in my hands and on my TV and everything, and I was excited just as anyone else was.
The game was initially going for a release on March 3 of 2020, but was later pushed to April 10 of 2020 to iron out any dents. Things appeared to be shaky with the global pandemic thanks to the coronavirus. However, on that day, April 10, it happened. The game finally released with much success in reception and in sales, with its first weekend at over 700,000 copies for Japan, selling out in many stores. Digital sales exceeded 1 million within 3 days after release. The West also boasted prominent sales as well. Worldwide, the game shipped and sold over 3.5 million copies within 3 days, making this one of the biggest launches for a PS4 game. Not only that, but the fastest selling PS4 exclusive in history, surpassing Marvel's Spider-Man and God of War.
Whew, man, that was quite the mouthful, wasn't it? It goes to show that Final Fantasy VII is such a special thing for gamers. It's such a life-changing thing potentially for a lot of people. And this is coming from me, and with the context of being a casual Square fan, or gamer, I guess, for Square games, or a very casual Final Fantasy fan. I do really like some points of Final Fantasy. I think a lot of the character designs are really cool and all that stuff. The music is great for a lot of the games, and especially, you know, as someone who played Final Fantasy X, I love Auron. He's such a cool-looking, badass dude with a long sword. It's just, he was such a cool character. That's one of the things I do like from Final Fantasy VII, or not, 10, excuse me, just from memory alone. Let's put that aside and really focus on 7 Remake here. At this point, I think it's really safe to say that, in my opinion, this is the best Final Fantasy experience you can get right now, definitely for this generation, that you can get your hands on. So let's just break it down. Let's start with the things I really like about for this game.
Dun, 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 dun.
All right, the graphics. Oh my god, the graphics. This is the time to get a new TV, and I was so glad I was able to get my hands on a brand new TV back right at the end of 2019. I really think the HDR experience just really makes it all the better for your eyes. But for the sake of capturing and streaming it, I turned that off. So I really got to see it with both ways. And so with that, my first playthrough was 100% without HDR, and even without that, it's just like it was such a good-looking game for this generation. It's definitely worth experiencing HDR if you have a PlayStation 4 and you have a HDR TV to support that. If you are able to just wing it and not stream it and play it all on your own, by all means go for it. It really does enhance the experience for your eyes. My goodness, I really have never thought a Final Fantasy game couldn't have looked this good at this time. It really goes to show of how much work they put into this game with just the looks alone. The colors, the lighting, the cinematography, the cutscenes, man, just so juicy. The more I see these in-game cutscenes in different games such as Yakuza, pre-rendered movie cutscenes may be seeing its way out way sooner than I thought, seems like. Not to mention the characters themselves have so much life and as well as the environments around them with these enhancements and stuff. It really goes to show of how much of a experience you can get from remaking a game this old to here. It's really such a magical feeling of seeing things really kind of come to life pretty much on your newest TV screen or monitor. Oh man, all the key locations for Midgar, like I said, it's just really has a lot of life has been brought to them. There's just so much substance thanks to modern tech, and yeah, Final Fantasy games have really never looked so good till now. Granted, this is a pretty linear JRPG, unlike previous games.
Now, with that said, there were obvious corners cut for the game. You can see that with the doors at the motel where Cloud first stayed. Also, Aerith's house and the flower beds around it were, to me anyway, somewhat of a letdown. You can also see that the different models were used between in-game cutscenes and the actual game itself. This example makes this really obvious. This technique has been used across other video games such as Arc Sys Systems, Guilty Gear, and now Granblue Fantasy Versus as well, with the whole model swapping in and out between the cinematic models and the fighting models as well. But VII Remake, for the most part, does a great job making those transitions appear seamless. All in all, the graphics were a hit out of the park, especially with this being a console game.
The character designs or redesigns to kind of meet today's standards are just fantastic and further complemented by the graphics. Most of them, like I said, they have been modernized for the better without going overboard and wrecking the character's original charm from back in the day. But man, going from these like goofy but charming looking polygon figures or low poly figures to these ones, like, oh my goodness, and especially when you see these models in action, like, wow. it's such an experience, like, on the eyes overall. It's so breathtaking. I think just the graphics alone, I think you should get this game, and yeah, especially if you have a PS4 Pro, you gotta get this game, dude. It really will give the PS4 the run for its money, man. It's like breathtaking, unbelievable.
Not only it looks fantastic, it sounds fantastic. This soundtrack is just unbelievable of how much of a revamp this received as well. It really enhances the already incredible moments in the game. It really hits the right amount of those nostalgic notes like the battle theme in your first bombing mission.
Get down here, Merc.
Overall, this definitely deserves the game soundtrack of the year, with its astonishing composition, and of course we can't forget the voice acting. Whether it's English or Japanese, it is a damn treat. Although I play the game with Japanese voices, I must give kudos to the English side of things, considering that it tends to fall under the shadows of Japanese voiceovers. But this is a special exception as it stands on its own, especially with a brand new cast. John Eric Bentley really nailed his performance as Barrett Wallace, making the gun arm toting character so memorable.
You better be worth the money, Merc. Every last gill. You gonna stand there and pretend you can't hear the planet crying out in pain? I know you can!
You really hear that?
Damn straight I do!
Get help.
Say that again!
I'd worry less about the planet and more about the next 5 seconds. Save the screaming for later.
Of course, Cloud sounded pretty good in its own right. It's tricky to sound cool and being emotionless at the same time during early moments, then kind of grow from there as a character. Much kudos to Cody Christian for voicing Cloud.
Just bear with him for me, would you?
Yeah!
Should have asked for more money.
Even the humorous moments were really great with his delivery.
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
One extra mention, I love that Wedge has the same voice as Badger from Breaking Bad, and it was such a great fit. Also kudos to Matt L. Jones on that one.
Come on, nobody do something this crazy just for money. They may not think you're a true believer, but you know what I think?
Not interested.
What?
Now let me just say the Japanese side of things for voices just so juicy. I know I already said that before, but it really is. Especially with Cloud and Sephiroth, man. Sephiroth just sounds super badass.
あんたは死んだ。ほう。俺がこの手で。もちろん覚えているとも。我々の大切な思い出だからな。さてクラウド。お前に頼みがある。この星が死のうとしている。悲鳴も上げず、静かに、ゆっくりと。私たちの星が消えてしまうのだ。クラウド。
Now, when it comes to characters like Professor Hojo, that's really funny to me. But, you know, comical, evil, like, you know, sort of voice that he had. It's the same voice as Buggy the Clown from One Piece. So, thanks to Shigeru Chiba. So I thought that was really funny and cool. He's such a great voice actor, and once again, he's voicing a character with round sunglasses. So you know, you kind of, you know, get reminders of Don Kanoji from Bleach, and of course the beloved Fang from Street Fighter V. One of the oddball-looking characters, you know, whenever he was first revealed.
せっつかれる私の立場を察してくれないか。あの強欲どもをさっさと黙らせて偉大な研究に没頭したいんだ。エアリスン、毛髪、皮膚から内臓、骨の一辺に至るまで。やはり古代史は素晴らしい。誇りたまえ。イファルナは細胞まで美しかったんや。
It's just so funny of the coincidence that, you know, these characters sort of have the round sunglasses and the voice actor. Before I move on to the next thing, I just actually wanted to take this time to honor a prolific Japanese voice actor, or seiyuu, who was unfortunately taken from us too soon. His name was Keiji Fujiwara. He was 55 years old. Very, very widely known within the industry. He has voiced many characters. A lot of father figures, to be funny enough. The one that I remember most from him was like way back when, when I was a little kid in the 90s. He was the voice for Shin-chan's dad, Hiroshi Nohara. It was the voice, that I always sort of identify with him, and he had definitely a good number of like really cool like roles and stuff. And within the Final Fantasy sort of context, he voiced Reno in this game. This was pretty much his last video game performance before he passed on, so he definitely gave it his all.
少しならいい。やったー。それじゃあ。
邪魔するぞ。と。お前何？やっぱり本物かよ。クラスはファースト。いくらなんでもファーストってお前よ。
And I think him as Reno was absolutely great. Reno himself was really cool. I did like his presence whenever he was around, and definitely another memorable performance by him. And funny enough, when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, he voiced Axel, who kind of shares sort of common traits with Reno, with the red hair and stuff like that. Kind of like probably like they come from the same like sort of concept art and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty funny. I think that's what they had in mind anyway when it comes to Axel and Reno. Thank you, Fujiwara-san, for your last hurrah and your hard work as Reno and Axel, and of course everyone else. That was pretty much in your resume. You will be dearly missed, and it always sucks to kind of hear these kind of stories, but it is what it is.
上の連中は何考えてんだろうな。
反乱分子は徹底的に叩く。うちは昔からそうしてきた。
全部潰れちまうぜ。今さら善人ぶるなよ。
I also wanted to mention the written dialogue is just so much fun. You can definitely tell that the localizers were really having fun with it. They definitely took Final Fantasy into heart, especially the English text, the English side of the localization team. They really knew how to kind of have fun with the Western audiences while preserving the characters' overall personality, or just really preserving the story and all that stuff. The spirit of things, definitely. And so I really wanted to give extra kudos to the localization team as well, making it such a fun rendition of VII Remake's dialogue.
Shinra knows better than to stick its nose in my boss's business.
Like I give a shit.
The character investment in this game is such a great experience, with the entire cast going through the motions and their reactions to these situations that they go through is so believable. Watching Cloud throughout the game, him growing, is just so good. The relationship between characters really blossoms well, especially with Cloud and his relationships with other people. It just really shows of how much of his emotions sort of grow in range, and really, makes you really invest with Cloud and everyone else around him too.
I wish I could have done more. Just got hurt.
You did enough. You took one for the team. Be proud.
Yeah? Yeah!
But let me say this also. The ambiguous sort of romance that's going on with Jesse and Tifa and Aerith and Cloud, like, man, oh, damn, that's all I gotta say.
行ってみよう。
え？
でも大丈夫。凄腕のボディーガードいるから。ね。
お化けは専門外だ。
そんなこと言わないで。なんとかして。
分かったから離れてくれ。
They're also really able to bring these secondary characters and make them really lovable, whether they're good or bad guys, especially with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge getting a good amount of screen time and making them that much more, lovable along with the rest of the main cast. So whenever you see these sad moments happen on the screen, man, you definitely feel it, man. You start to feel the weight of those tears, and even I got a little misty-eyed during those scenes. Not gonna lie. On the other side of the cast, the bad guys, Hojo himself was just so maniacal, comical, and yet so entertaining on screen. Just nasty. He had that smile on his face. On top of, the voice acting and stuff, it was such a treat to watch. Along with the rest of the bad guys as well. I cannot leave this review without mentioning Roach. Like, Roach or Roche, Roche, Rock, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but I'm gonna go with Roach. This guy is the definition of wild and rambunctious and also over the top, man. It was such a contrast to the overall serious nature that Seven tends to try to give off. It was just so stupid that it was funny. It only adds more to the entertainment value that Seven Remake has to offer. I really just wish that he makes more appearances in the future games. Gotta have more of Roach in 7 Remake. I mean, this balance of humor and the serious nature of things really reminds me of another game that kind of takes the cinematics and the gameplay kind of seriously at times, which is Yakuza. I've been on this Yakuza train for a good while. Starting from 6 and having to watch all the Yakuza stuff around it, and I played almost all the other Yakuza games, but having to be kind of embedded within Yakuza and going through this, it really does give me those reminders and those notes and stuff like that, these hints. It definitely has similar sort of tastes and flavors and stuff that Yakuza tends to do with the cinematics and the gameplay sort of balances as well.
小清水
あんたと会うてからずっとこん時を待っちょった。
すぐ後悔することになる。
望むところじゃ。行くできりゃ。
I really get those reminders during the wall market chapters, and the honeybee scene. Holy shit! Perhaps they took some notes from the Yakuza games to how they should present their games or their cutscenes or whatever. The presentation, it just reeks of Yakuza to me.
ようやく優勝になるってわけさ。話違う。それは私が言いたいよ。こうつくばりめ、くそ。
Now with that said, let's cover the very meat of the video game, the gameplay. I really grew to like this ATB system here ever since the demo. Originally this was a turn-based JRPG, but by today's standards it seems old, so action hack and slash JRPGs are really popular amongst newer gamers. So this does a really good job of sorts covering both styles. While you can hack and slash to build up your ATB meter, which then allows to perform special moves or commands such as spells or items, but is all done in a command list, which is followed with a slow motion ramp of sorts, so you can take your time, think, strategize, and then use that move. This really adds that hybrid blend sort of feel with the turn-based elements and action, of course. So it essentially becomes the best of both worlds, and it really adds strategy into play. Now let's not leave out the materia system and the other RPG elements.
I really just think it's just fun. I just love the kind of the balance of the turn-based sort of elements and also the hack and slash elements in there too. But let's not forget the weapon upgrades. I really do like how they go about that. You can upgrade the attack power, the magic power, and also increase the material slots and more abilities. It really adds up to, it becomes really satisfying when you earn those abilities with each weapon, and of course collecting more weapons and doing more upgrades and stuff, and collecting the summons as well. Those summons were, some of them were really cool looking. A little underwhelming on the cinematics side of things, coming from, as someone who played Final Fantasy X and seeing all that crap on the screen. And then if you compare to this, while yes, it does look good, it really shows off the graphics and everything as well, it kind of comes off a little short. I kind of wish it took a little longer to sort of reference of how long these summons take when it comes to the original Final Fantasy VII, but that's just my personal thing. Also, the boss battles were really fun and memorable and downright cool. It definitely left those imprints in my head, especially with Roach. And then there's Erigor, and of course Rufus. Holy crap, I've never really thought this guy would be so cool on the screen until now. I think the difficulty is just perfect. It offered a great amount of challenge without kind of breaking the players in half like me for example. And I did play through mostly normal mode until the very last boss battle. I think I was just, I don't know, maybe I was under leveled or something. It got super difficult for me, and I couldn't do it with the given time I had at the time, because I kind of wanted to get it done, and especially I was streaming too. I had obligations to take care of, so that's why I had to rush through it, put it on easy mode for that particular part. And well, at least I got to experience easy mode, and it definitely is easy mode. Like, I guess it was such an easy mode that Kotaku had to make an article about it, but anyway. And then there's always unlocking a hard mode once you beat the game, and that's I don't know, I haven't played it myself, but I've heard some wonderful stories about hard modes, so I'm gonna leave that for everyone else. I can live without that one. I'm pretty satisfied with this difficulty, so I'm pretty good. I think I'll go back to the one part I had to turn on easy mode for, and I'll probably feel good about myself. But no hard mode for me. I don't need to put myself through that again just to, I don't know, experience it. Another thing to remember when it comes to gameplay are the mini games. Again, man, Yakuza, it just reminds me of Yakuza. I know I'm annoying you guys with Yakuza, but that's just how it is for me. That's where I come from. So the gameplay here overall is well done. I had a lot of fun with it, bar none. Oh, and by the way, I'm Team Tifa all the way, man. Not to say that the other female characters were lackluster or anything like that. It's just Tifa, man. Come on, she is so awesome.
Well, most people would say something sweet right about now.
I'm sure they would.
But you're a more discerning customer, aren't you? In which case, our house special, the Cosmo Canyon.
Beautiful.
I gotta go.
Now you can say this is a nearly perfect game, but personally, there are two major gripes that sort of interconnect with each other. So here goes. Here's gripe number one. It does feel to me like the cutscenes are padding out a lot of the game, So it really offers a more cinematic experience, putting it on the same pedestal as games like Uncharted and Last of Us and all those Sony games that, you know, kind of give off that same sort of vibe, you know what I mean? So I felt like Final Fantasy VII Remake definitely kind of was climbing up to that same pedestal, if not already. So it really does feel like a movie as well as a game, especially during the beginning, like that whole opening sequence, man, that definitely feels a lot like a movie with, you know, with all the music and all that stuff going on. Like it's something straight out of a movie theater experience. And like I said, it's gonna connect to gripe number 2. It really makes the game really linear in that sense, and I wish there were, you know, better opportunities for you to be able to go back, explore, backtrack a bit. But not only that, you can go grind and level up and do side quests if you've missed out already. But for the most part, the game really emphasizes that linear feel, and thus kind of like correlating with the whole cinematic experience. So you can say it's, you know, definitely similar to Kingdom Hearts in terms of like how the game flows and stuff. But at least with Kingdom Hearts, I think you can go back and forth with the gummy ship, right? So you don't have that here, of course. So this definitely makes it way more linear in comparison to Kingdom Hearts. However, when you do beat the game, you do have the chapter select feature unlocked, and also the save file data carries around as you select or go back and forth with the chapters. So it really does give a, you know, new game plus sort of experience in a good way. I think that now becomes more like a open worldish sort of game. You can go back and beat this boss again, level up, and then go to this chapter and then beat the boss there, and then level even more, and then upgrade your weapons, materia, and all that stuff. And then you can go kick the last boss's ass again with all the stuff that you got, you know, along the way now in your future playthroughs. I just wish that, you know, in your first playthrough, I wish it was just a little more open worldish, offer a little more freedom within the world itself, and not through beating the game and jumping through stuff via menus and stuff like that. I wish it was there from the get-go. Actually, there was one more gripe I did want to point out, but it's a little more on the minor side, but it will kind of bother you nonetheless. And that's with the dialogue from the characters when you're like running around or walking around, wandering around the world from your party members. It just sort of happens randomly, or when you beat, you know, this side quest, or, you know, when you go over this story beat. You hear dialogue from the characters and stuff. Now, a lot of times these moments just clash, not like all over the place, you know, with the dialogue and stuff, and just, you know, really clashes with each other, especially from the NPCs and everyone else around you, your party members. It just kind of stuffs your ears, and you're just like, oh, whoa, at times. And you can definitely miss out on potentially really cool, you know, sort of pieces from characters to add more to the backstory. I've heard some really cool stuff, but then it just right at the end or right in the middle of things just it gets cut off from like me running into this next point of the chapter. Or, you know, if you walk around with Cloud or whatever, then it's a little better, but I wish there was a better sort of dialogue distribution, sort of control. I wish, you know, the main characters have priority over NPCs when it comes to dialogue, so that way you can hear you know, what characters have to say, their reactions and stuff like that. You can get all the, you know, lore and backstory that you can get without having clashing all over the place from like different parts of the game. And man, it was something you have to tolerate. And yeah, as much as this game is AAA, there are a number of glitches that people have encountered. And this one in particular was definitely, I had one recorded. You gotta check this out. Oh, what the fuck? Look at him. Oh, I can't. Look at that. Oh shit. What? Oh shit. What? Oh. Oh. Yeah, it was such a nice little glitch that I was featured on Kotaku highlights. But yeah, anyway. Anyways, now this next one is a big one, and it is indeed the spoiler section. Now, it's not going to be too long. I do just want to point out one major thing in spoilers. So obviously, if you haven't played the game already or haven't got to the big end game of things, obviously you want to turn this off or skip to this timestamp right here. So spoiler warning, I'm about to talk about a major part in the story. So skip to this timestamp if you haven't gotten there already or you haven't even played the game from the get-go.
No! Wait! Give me a minute!
No.
Why you have to be such a hard-ass, bro?
I ain't your bro.
Okay, well, here it goes. Simply put, this Final Fantasy VII is not the same Final Fantasy VII that you guys know and love from the old game. Obviously not from the, not just the graphics and the gameplay and everything. This is actually not the same Final Fantasy VII within the universe. This is an alternate Final Fantasy VII universe. Yeah, you heard that right. And those ghost things that were swirling around throughout the chapters and they were really annoying, the whispers, what are they exactly? Red pretty much summed it up here in this one scene.
運命の番人という理解が最適だ。運命の流れを変えようとする者の前に現れ、行動を修正する。
I think it's really funny because in a way, at least in my eyes anyway, they do represent the fans, the players of old, the players who got, Final Fantasy VII at launch and played it through and have all this nostalgic whatever, right? The hardcore Final Fantasy VII fans. That's them. That's them swearing around and telling you, no, this is not how things go and stuff like that. I'm sure a good chunk of them want to preserve the story of the original, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, keep it the same exact fate as these characters, are going through. So this is a brand new universe, and the Whispers are trying to make the same events happen exactly how they happened in the original Final Fantasy VII game. Sephiroth and a certain girl, of course, are the only people who know and fully realize this pretty much about these fates. And because Sephiroth knows what happens to himself, Sephiroth naturally wants to change things for himself because said fate wasn't so good for him, was it? So he wants to change it. And so that kind of explains his motives for Remake 7 here. There is actually one other person who kind of see these premonitions that happen in the original game, and that's Cloud. But of course, he hasn't really fully realized why this is so, or what really is the big picture here. Him having to absorb the Mako energy, that what's causing these premonitions to pop in his head. So these things happen whenever Aerith does something, or Aerith, is around, or something sets off from a cutscene or something to Cloud. That's why it's happening, because of the Mako energy he absorbed, and he's kind of, one with the live stream, I guess, right? So that's why he's able to sort of see these things. But, again, he doesn't realize it just yet, so that's just what it is for right now. It's also rather rambunctious that the game already kind of spells what kind of game is going to be, with all these future premonitions kind of thrown left and right, through Cloud's eyes, or just like anyone's eyes in general. I mean, and now that I realize that a number of people have already seen these future premonitions, right? Because throughout that big boss battle, all these swirling beams go around and go through people's heads, and they see these future premonitions. They see all these cutscenes that already happened within the original universe. So it just really spells out of what kind of game it's supposed to be, and I really feel like it's going to be like, well, Kingdom Hearts. And so there's probably going to be a lot of crossover with the original and the remake universe. So that potentially sounds pretty cool, but because of how convoluted these stories tend to be, that could present some problems for the big fans as well. Let's just take one example. We know that Aerith dies in the original, right? And that's going to likely happen here, because that's pretty much what the game here is kind of spelling out for Cloud and whatever, right? With the materia dropping and all that stuff, just like, well, the original cutscene. Again, like these cutscenes, all these future premonitions have been shown throughout the game. And especially by the end of the game, you see a lot more of these premonitions. So, but back onto Aerith, after she dies, they can just go and maybe possibly have an alternate Aerith take her place. And that possibility, it just seems like it's right around the corner. So that could kind of take away from the shocking nature of that cutscene in the first place. I don't know. I mean, it does sound cool on one hand, but the other hand, what seems to be bigger than anything, it may show some problems. I don't know. It may kind of soften the impact of things. Not to mention seeing Zack of all people as the Whispers were taking over the city, maybe really confused. Like I know enough about Zack, supposed to be being dead from Crisis Core and all that stuff, but this is probably saying that Zack is alive here in this universe? Like, what? Okay. Or maybe I'm being very ambitious about this, but that could be Zack from Universe 3 even. So maybe there could be 3 universes that are crossing over and stuff like that, because by the end of this whole finale or whatever, when Cloud and the others are walking away from Midgar, you see Zack carrying Cloud, within the remake game, and carrying Cloud into towards Midgar after that big battle, right? So I don't know. It seems really confusing. So was that part from Remake, or was that just like the universe crossing over each other from the original or whatever? It's just that's like a bit of a mindfuck for me on that part. So this whole finale obviously was, the most controversial thing that came out from this whole experience, and probably the #1 complaint, because the hardcore love their lore and all that stuff being intact. And again, it's kind of appropriate with the nature of those Whispers flying around and stuff. It definitely created a lot of confusion for the game, that's for sure. But once you kind of rewatch cutscenes, kind of piece things together and read up on the stuff from the wikis and all that stuff, then stuff starts to line up, and you start to realize what the direction is for this remake universe. It'd be really funny if like the classic low polygon Cloud kind of meets up with the remake Cloud, and along with the rest of the party. Like, that would be really funny. But this is all coming from someone with a clearer mindset, as someone who didn't really like play the original from back in the day. So I don't have that like hardcore sort of nostalgic sort of rose-tinted glasses sort of outlook on things. I'm coming here with like a clean palette relatively. So personally, I felt that this is an interesting take in my opinion, as much as I was super confuzzled at first when I first beat the game. So that's it for spoilers. Let's just jump back into the non-spoiler portion of things and pretty much the end game of this review.
運命って運命？
言い換えれば、この星が生まれて消えるまでの流れ。
その流れはもう決まっている。そういうこと？
ああ、星は力尽きてしまうらしい。
So for those of you who jump away from the spoiler portion of things, I still think the story is spectacular. I think it's very intriguing to say the very least. Even with the stuff I mentioned from the spoiler section of things, in case you guys did watch through that, I definitely think they are taking some crazy turns on purpose for people to get people talking and be invested and get hooked for the second one. And I think they really did a good job on that, in my opinion. Because I'm certainly looking forward to it, as well as many others are, I guess, for part 2. So ultimately, by the end of things, I think this is a strong contender for the game of the year. I think they've struck the best balance of bringing in something new, wowing people, while preserving the foundation that made Final Fantasy VII special and lovable in the first place. Let's just hope that Nomura doesn't go too crazy, you know, because you know how he is with Kingdom Hearts and all that stuff. We don't want the Nomura effect on Final Fantasy VII Remake at the end of things, but you know, it is what it is, I guess. He's the one, you know, taking the wheels, so I guess we gotta respect it. But we'll see how crazy it goes. But putting that aside, despite my complaints, this game is more than a good time to be had. At least this feels like a really good movie with gameplay thrown in there that's really fun. So at least that's a plus for me. And also the New Game Plus experience is, you know, really good with the replayability and stuff like that. Especially with hard mode, if you like challenge and stuff like that, that's there for you guys. So I really do think that the hype and excitement, it really paid off, you know, after all that was gathered, you know, throughout the years, as you know, the announcements and stuff like that, all the developing and stuff, people have been waiting for, and all that. I think it definitely paid off. I'm really glad that it did, and man, it's such a magical experience in my opinion. And again, this is coming from someone who is pretty casual on things with a cleaner palette and all that stuff. I feel it. I definitely do feel it. So I think they really did a good job on things, considering with what the nature of this game is supposed to be this time around. So anyways, with that, all that said, finally I can give it a score. So with that, Final Fantasy VII Remake definitely deserves a super solid 9 out of 10. I just, you know, really wish that the linear nature of things was pulled back just enough to offer, you know, opportunities to like go back and explore and you know, kind of catch up on things, and and grind, of course. That's always like one of the pleasures that I look for when it comes to JRPGs, but not as easy to do in these sort of games that are super linear and all that stuff. To, you know, also to kind of give it a little more of a more open worldish sort of feel to it, kind of make a little more of a vast feeling for Midgar. But you know, perhaps they can do that for Remake Part 2 or whatever it's going to be called. And speaking of which, man, what are the possibilities for a Remake Part 2? Well, I think first off, it's going to be a brand new game. It's not going to be like DLC or nothing, so all that grinding and stuff like that may mean nothing at the end of things. I obviously don't want to like carry over your level and stuff like that and be already overpowered and stuff like that. You'll probably have to get those limit breaks again, and through like probably the first couple of chapters or something like that. I don't know, maybe it's gonna be like a story thing where you all just forget all of a sudden because something, right? And then you just go through this long tutorial of like all these mechanics, and then the limit break again, and yeah. So I think that's probably gonna happen, but I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of possibilities. Man, it does get me thinking when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. The other question is how many parts are gonna be for this whole thing. I don't think it's gonna be 3. Even though 3 is kind of like a magical number, I think they will try to do more than that, just so you know they can give it that quality sort of content distribution for each sort of chapter or arc within 7. I would at least say it's 4. I don't know. I think that's the lowest they can go. You know, maintaining quality and all that stuff, especially with how this one kind of set the standard. So I feel like 4 is a pretty good number without being too long, but not too kind of scrunched up either. That's just my guess anyway. Yeah, I really think they can't do the same quality for 3 things or 3 discs. Yeah, I think it's gonna be 4 or more. I don't know. So what we just played just now, this is disc 1, baby. I think also it's really funny to look back on those initial complaints about the length of the game. You know, people were complaining about how short the game was. I think it struck a good balance, like I said before. I think it had enough content. It was a good hook, a really good hook for this story anyway, for Remake 7. I think it really did a good job being a hook for players like me, I guess. So either way, I'm excited for more, and you can definitely say that I'm a Final Fantasy VII fan. I'm not sure if I'm a Final Fantasy fan in general, but definitely for 7, yeah, I'm definitely sold on it. Remake definitely is a big, major contributor to that. We'll probably see an announcement of sorts from 2021, and then the release of Part 2 for 2022, if we're lucky at that. That's just my guess anyway. Maybe it'll come out for next year, and then it'll be a yearly thing. I don't know, but either way, I can't wait. It's gonna happen. It's gotta happen. So that is it for me on this review for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I had so much fun with it. It's such a grand experience. One of the best games to kind of go out on for this generation anyway, for the PS4. I think it's just really appropriate, in my opinion. Not that, Final Fantasy VII was the last game on the PS1 or anything like that, but in the grand scheme of things, Final Fantasy VII Remake for this year, I think it was pretty cool to kind of end it on those notes, where they all kind of pull out the big guns with the graphics and all that stuff. And yeah, like I said, it's definitely a strong contender. It definitely has a really good chance to take Game of the Year, especially with the developer story, man. Holy crap, dude, that is unbelievable. But we'll definitely have to see with like Last of Us Part 2, but I think with the recent controversy of things, it's looking a little rough. I don't know. I'll give that game a chance. Since I played the first one, I liked it for what it was. But yeah, I think it's not gonna happen with that game. I don't know. Game of the Year, not that game. Maybe Cyberpunk. I think that's probably the next strong contender on that one. I think that's gonna be the real competition on that one for Final Fantasy VII Remake. But man, we'll see about that. Especially with this whole COVID-19 thing, it's really limiting on what's being released and stuff like that, on the delays and all the stuff that's been happening around it. I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see how many games get released overall for the rest of 2020. So definitely been a weird year, but hey, at least Remake 7 came out, and it was such a great game. So anyways, I'm going to leave it on that note. Hope you guys enjoyed the review. Really appreciate your time, guys. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and comment about Final Fantasy VII Remake. What do you guys think of it? Leave that in the comment section below. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell as well. That's really the most helpful thing you could do for YouTubers. So really appreciate it if you guys do that. I do have a Twitch, I do have a Twitter, and all that stuff in the description below. Pretty much, I think, for the next review, I don't know, man. It's gonna happen with Last of Us Part 2? I don't know. Maybe Persona 5 Royal once I hop in that game, but I don't know. Maybe I'll take a little break from it for now. But anyways, it's been a pretty weird year, I must say, so far. But anyways, thank you guys so much. This has been my review for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Really had fun with the game. I think you should guys. I think it's you should guys vote for Game of the Year. I don't know. That's just me anyway. All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Sean out.